and Life Institute, Boston, Massachusetts, and Oba, Nigeria. The following is a subsection of the book. Everyone is a Protestant. Written and published by Ifeanyi Chukwujima, scriptural scientist and a servant of God. This subsection's ID is Everyone is a Protestant, Book 42. Truth as God tells it in the Scriptures versus truth as the Gentile Church teaches it versus truth as the secular world projects it. Inspired by the Spirit of truth, I have done exhaustive studies on the Scriptures through the eyes of my spirit, and with respect to my knowledge of engineering, science, and technologies, and on the Gentile Church from its inception in the Roman Empire through the Middle Ages, and on the secular world and the rogue science that continues to shape the secular world and everything else in the human life. Below is a contrast of the truth as God tells the truth in the Scriptures versus the truth as the Gentile church leaders have been telling it, and the truth as the secular world continues to mold it through rogue science and greed. Here is the truth as the Gentile church leaders have been telling it: that the world is one and the same as the earth, that they are mutually interchangeable, that whenever the Bible speaks about the earth, it is speaking about the world, and whenever the Bible talks about the world, it is talking about the earth, that the universe and space are interchangeably referred to as the heavens in the Bible, that when the Bible talks about one, it is automatically speaking about the other, that God created all things, and that in ways that are too mysterious for human beings to understand, God controls all things. That whatever we currently do not understand is not meant for us to understand and must remain a mystery, that we should not question anything in the Bible because it destroys our faith in God, even after Jesus Christ, in Revelation 2 verse 2, commended the church at Ephesus for testing and rejecting as false those who presented themselves to the church as apostles. Anyone who accepts everything without testing ends up believing lies that are so prevalent in our fallen world. Therefore, God requires that we test everything to reject all falsehood and remain in the truth. That is the reason why He gave science to the world through the church, to allow the church to systematically test everything that is not explicitly stated in the Bible before teaching them as truths. We do not test because we are doubtful of God. We test to avoid being sucked into lies and deceptions. As a matter of fact, the Bible commands us to test everything and hold on to what is good and reject all that is not good. 1 Thessalonians 5 verses 19 to 21 NIV. Do not quench the spirit. 20. Do not treat prophecies with contempt. 21. But test them all. Hold on to what is good. 22. Reject every kind of evil. That how God controls all things is supposed to remain a mystery to us. That it is not given to human beings to know and understand how God does these things. That, in the meantime, we are permitted to spin the words of the Bible, to get the truth out of them, either through philosophy or other means that lend themselves to helping us shape and solidify the doctrines and dogmas we have established, which make our respective religious groups unique and different from every other. That, in our defense of the gospel, we are justified to viciously repel anyone who refuses to adopt our doctrines and dogmas and punitively deal with them, even execute them. Hence the controversies of the early Gentile church and the brutal handling of the controversies and the countless lives they cost. That people have the right to live whichever way they choose, as long as they are not violating the law of the land and the law of our religion, denominations. That the government and the people have the right to pursue, economically, whatever produces profit and utility for the people to the extent religion permits, that the law of the land and the law of God are equally important. And when the two conflict, that a compromise should be reached for the sake of peace. That God would not mind such compromise since He had commanded believers to obey all governing authorities, that poverty is inevitable, such that even Christ said that there will always be the poor, that everyone should keep what they make, since there are human laws that said so, that the haves should give charity to help the have-nots survive, hence the appreciable religious support for public programs in the Western societies like food stamps, affordable housing, etc. That the original sin makes it mandatory for all to suffer. Regardless of one's holiness, that holiness comes from dutiful observation of religious rites and or constant profession of faith in God and his Christ. That all the devoutly religious people will go to heaven because their religiosity is a proof that they love and obey God, some after spending time in purgatory for the Catholics. That only those who believe and practice as their religious leaders believe and practice are the ones who will go to heaven, and maybe a handful of others whose beliefs and practices are close to their religious leaders. That humility does not mean becoming a doormat for people to wipe their feet on in abuse of you. That you should be humble only when you are not being abused or sensing abuse. That we should give to the extent we desire to receive, the extent we are comfortable with. That our rewards from God comes from our religiosity and have little to do with what we really do in our respective lives, the evangelicals. That how long our denomination or religion has been around is a testament to God's approval of our teachings and our religious observances. That law and commandment are basically the same, the commands of God in the Bible. Here is the truth as the secular world continues to mold it through rogue science. That the world consists of the earth and everything that ice inside the earth, the atmosphere and everything that is in the atmosphere, and the sea and everything that is inside the sea, plus the impact space and its contents have on the earth, the sea, the atmosphere, and all that exists within them. That the universe is separate from our space, but dependent on our space. And that while everything in the universe swirls around, space doesn't. That the universe somehow created itself inside our space through time and continues to amaze. That space and time are a package whose origin the world physicists are still trying to find. And that there is no God, that it is our right to figure out how all things work. Sathat, we can fully exploit nature for our gains and self-aggrandizement. That there are no mysteries except the truth we have not yet figured out. That nothing is beyond the reach of human beings unless they refuse to go for it. That all the Bible talk about God over the ages was the religious man's clever way of manipulating others and keeping them under the church's control. That science is work in progress. That patchwork increments are the way to go in determining truths. If it fits, accept it as truth. And when something that fits better becomes available, unapologetically discard what was. Accept it as truth before, and accept the newer one in its place, that the world is entitled to spin the words of the Bible as it chooses, just as the Gentile church leaders have been doing to serve their various purposes for more than 1,000 years, which broke the church up into 1,000 bickering denominations, that as the Gentile church used philosophy to argue spirituality, the secular world reserves the right to justify their own position using everything in its arsenal, which helps them shape and solidify their ideologies and help them retain their place, wealth, and influence in the world. That law is law and must be obeyed, or consequences will follow. And that commandment is just a religious version of law, that we have the right to viciously repel anyone who refuses to adopt our ideologies, as well as to punitively deal with them, up to taking away their freedom and their lives. That it is our duty and our prerogative to force the world to practice our politics and other things we deem civilized, or severely be punished through deprivation of vital resources and isolation. That whatever we have not verified or judged verifiable, through our very limited knowledge of the world around us, must be regarded as a lie or unscientific. That people have the right to live whichever way they choose as long as they are not violating the law of the land. That the government and the people have the right to economically pursue whatever produces profit and utility. Because the government owns the land and the people that live on it, that no law is higher in the land than the law the lawmakers of the land has established, that even the law of God in the Bible is only acceptable if and when it submits to the law of the land. That poverty is inevitable, that even the Christian's Messiah recognizes that. That everyone should keep what they make. That is the reason why there are economic and financial laws about wealth generation, ownership, and protection. That the haves should give philanthropy to show generosity and good will towards the members of their society. That public programs should be established to ensure that the have-nots do not get the wrong ideas and begin to attack the haves, like in the French Revolution. And here is the truth as God tells it in the scriptures. That up to this day, our space remains completely submerged inside the immeasurable Isaiah 40 verse 12 NIV, crystal clear water, Revelation 22 verse 1 NIV, of creation in God's mighty hand, Isaiah 40 verse 12 NIV, which continues to keep our space under vacuum and most of our space under sub-zero temperatures, Genesis 1 verses 6 to 7. That God passed each of the stars in our universe and the planets when they were still stars through this immeasurable water of creation, as God brought the starry hosts into our universe from the space of heaven. And that none of the stars were extinguished by the mighty deluge because of God's great power and mighty strength, Isaiah 40 verse 26 NIV. That the formation of the universe within our space, which has been theorized as a Big Bang, is no bang at all, according to Isaiah 40 verse 26 NIV, but an unprecedented suction through the water of creation of our celestial bodies from the space of heaven where every single one of them existed, Job 38 verses 4 to 7 NIV, before God's carving out of our space from the space of heaven, as God majestically sat on his throne in heaven. When you pull a suction underwater, you remove not only the matter that existed in the space you just created, but the heat as well, because heat clings to matter whose temperature heat raises. So, when matter is evacuated, heat evacuates with matter, leaving the space that is created in a big chill, as we currently observe in our space. And we know that water is a poor conductor of heat. God bringing the starry hosts into our space, one by one and calling out each by name, does not mean that God did it at snail pace speed, but rather at the speed of God, which is infinitely faster than the speed of light. We know that a modern man-made high-speed barcode scanner captures every barcode in a fully loaded 40-foot truck in a matter of seconds as the truck drives by the scanner. Know also that it took God only an instant to bring all the celestial bodies, billions upon billions of them, through the water of creation in his mighty hand and account for every single one of them, as recorded for us in Isaiah 40 verse 26 NIV, that the water, if it had a mind, would have been wondering what just took place inside it. This is how the water of creation in God's mighty hand was covered in pitch darkness, Genesis 1 verse 2, before time started in Genesis 1 verses 3 to 5. All the water vapor that rose from the billion trillion stars passing through the water of creation in short order. That space-time is an illusion, a figment of the world scientist's imagination, and not the origin of the universe, because time is always relative to place or event. That God created time and space on two separate days, time on day 1 of creation, Genesis 1 verses 3 to 5, and space on day 2 of creation, Genesis 1 verses 6 to 8, each replete with its own properties. That both the earth and the water of creation, Isaiah 40 verse 12, existed in God's mighty hand in Genesis 1 verse 2, before God created time on day 1, followed by space on day 2, and our universe on day 4 of creation, Genesis 1 verses 14 to 19. That our space consists of a rigid framework, Job 26:11 NIV, etc., consisting of 6-dimensional diamond microstructures, Ephesians 3 verse 18 NIV, etc., each with one visible realm and 7 that are concealed to the human eyes. That each microstructure of space is digitized and mapped to space's GPS and in real time collects information on everything that it scrolls through as the creations of God move in space, and uploads the information to God's infinitely advanced cloud technology intelligence system that is grace, whose treasurer is Jesus Christ. That God's unique design of the diamond microstructure of our space, which completely isolates each of the 8 realms of the microstructure from the 7 others, is responsible for light's sinusoidal movement through space. That our space has not grown one bit since God created space on day 2 of creation, nor has space changed in any other way since space's creation by God, because space, like time, is unaffected by nature. And on, the mysteries of our space continue. That law is the wisdom of God that is the foundation of life, of the truth, and of science. And that commandments are the commands of God in the Bible, which constitute the scientific steps needed by each human being to safely and profitably live the science that is their respective life, without impeding others and inflicting pains, grief, and sorrows on them, but instead enable them to fulfill their own life's obligations. That the world is the kingdom of the earth, the air and the sea, which consists of the earth and everything that is inside the earth, the atmosphere and everything that is in the atmosphere, and the sea and everything that is in the sea, plus grace and grace's real-time control of all things through space, that the things around us are not as simple as we understand them to be, that everything we see around us has layers and layers of meanings and implications, most of which would never become clear to us until the end of time. That the natural has its entire existence within the supernatural, and is in real time, controlled by the supernatural without which nothing exists. That the spirits which the ancients believed and feared are real and still here with us today, and controls everything we do in our Jet Age era. That the more we believe we got things all figured out outside of God, the less we know about our lives, and the more ignorant we become about the truth. That human beings stand on the earth but live in the world. We stand and walk around on the earth because God permanently turned Lucifer into a footmat for all living things. Ezekiel 28 verses 15 to 19. People and even the lowliest of animals. Isaiah 14 verses 4 to 11. To humiliate Lucifer for his selfishness, pride, and greed. Isaiah 14 verses 12 to 20. That the earth is full of worms, death, and decay, as further testament of God's great displeasure with Lucifer's self-centeredness that led to his untimely demise. Isaiah 14:11-12 NIV. That's second to life itself. God's truest gift to the soul-fevery human being is the gem that are the diamond microstructures of space, which are ever present in each human being and through which we, each, in real time, receive life and enlightenment from God. That no one who is wearing diamonds all over their body, as we all are, is poor unless they do not know the value of diamonds. That the universe is separate from space and is entirely dependent on space, through which the universe receives everything, including replenishment, support, etc. That God prepared space, the sky, on day 2 of creation, Genesis 1 verses 6 to 8, and created the universe, the heavens 2 days later, on day 4 of creation. Genesis 1 verses 14 to 19, that God made all of space and its grandeur diamond architecture invisible, because space is eternal and incorruptible, a most valuable extension of the eternal Word, His Son Jesus Christ, who is the accommodation, anchor, support, and security for all things. Acts 17 verse 28. Colossians 1 verses 16 and 17. The life in all living things. John 1 verse 4. John 5 verse 26. John 15 verse 5. The light and enlightenment. John 1 verses 4 and 9. God's circuitry of life and the only way to God. John 14 verse 6. John 16 verse 14. 1 Corinthians 12 verses 12 to 14. That as all human beings whom God had created the universe to mesmerize have shelf lives. Hebrews 9 verse 27. God made the universe to have a shelf life as well. Isaiah 34 verse 4. Mark 13 verse 31. Revelation 6 verse 14. Hence, the universe's visibility to human beings. In other words, everything God created eternal is invisible, and everything God created perishable is visible, that the entire universe rotates and swirls around every which way. But space remains fixed and an integral part of the space of heaven from which it was carved out on day 2 of creation, and to which it will blend back into at the very end of everything. 1 Corinthians 15:24-28 NIV. Then the end will come, when he hands over the kingdom to God the Father after he has destroyed all dominion, authority, and power. 25 For he must reign until he has put all his enemies under his feet. 26 The last enemy to be destroyed is death. 27 For he has put everything under his feet. Now when it says that everything has been put under him, it is clear that this does not include God himself, who put everything under Christ. 28 When he has done this, then the Son himself will be made subject to him who put everything under him, so that God may be all in all. What 1 Corinthians 15 verse 26 is saying is that when Jesus Christ defeats death as the last obstacle to life, because death is still claiming human lives, that God will revert the 7 hidden realms of the diamond microstructures of our space back to realms of light as it is in heaven, Matthew 6 verse 10. That way our space will naturally blend back in with the space of heaven where all 8 diamond microstructures of space are all light. 1 John 1 verse 5 NIV. This is the message we have heard from him and declare to you. God is light. In him there is no darkness at all. Figure 199. Our current space will merge back to the space of heaven after Christ defeats death. 1 Corinthians 15 verse 26 Our spaces, currently hidden 7 realms, 3 eternally alive and 4 eternally dead realms, will all become naturally alive, spiritually alive, and eternally alive, like the microstructures of the space of heaven, which are all light because God is all light. 1 John 1 verse 5. The water of creation in the hollow of God's mighty hand, which is currently surrounding our space, is the sea of Revelation 21 verse 1 NV that will be no more, as well as the sea of Revelation 12:12, which the devil came down into. Note from Genesis 1 verse 2 that the burning remains of Lucifer, Luke 10 verse 18 NIV, Ezekiel 28 verse 8 NIV, Revelation 12 verse 12 NIV, which God had formed into our earth. Ezekiel 28 verses 12 to 17 NIV, Job 38 verses 12 to 15 NIV, Isaiah 45 verse 18 NIV, was already completely submerged inside the water of creation in the hollow of God's mighty hand. Isaiah 40 verse 12 NIV, before God started time on day 1 of creation by shining his light on the face of the water of creation, Genesis 1 verses 3 to 5. The burning remains of Lucifer being inside the water of creation, the sea, also predated God's separation of water from water on day 2 of creation to create our space, Genesis 1 verses 6 to 8, which to this day remains completely submerged inside the water of creation in the hollow of God's mighty hand. The water of creation in the hollow of God's mighty hand served as the burial ground, the seas, for the wicked spirits, Ezekiel 28 verses 12 to 17 NIV, Job 38 verse 12. 15 NIV, Lucifer, Genesis 1 verse 2, Isaiah 14 verses 4 to 20 NIV, and his cohorts, Genesis 1 verse 14 KJV, Isaiah 40 verse 26 NIV, Isaiah 14 verse 20 NIV. Let the children of the wicked never be mentioned again, Revelation 12 verses 7 to 9 NIV. Before God used the water to create the marvels that are time, Genesis 1 verses 3 to 5, our space, Genesis 1 verses 6 to 8, our earth and its vegetations, Genesis 1 verses 9 to 13, our universe, Genesis 1 verses 14 to 19, aquatic life and birds, Genesis 1 verses 20 to 23, land animals, Genesis 1 verses 24 to 25, and human beings, Genesis 1:26-27. That God created the universe and continues in real time to uphold it, maintain it, renew it, rejuvenate it, manage it, and control it. that no one knows what God has not given them to know because God controls who gets what knowledge and understanding, how much they get, and when they get it. That every creation of God is created for a purpose which God had determined before He made the creation. And that whatever purpose God has in mind for creating anything, He promptly set the creation to achieve. And that each creation of God is measured in accordance with their fulfillment of the purpose they were created to satisfy, including human beings, and that among everything God has created in nature, only human beings have difficulty conforming to the purpose of their creation, which is maintaining their saltiness, ionic potential, E+, and E in God's electrolysis of life, which produces the light that is God. 1 John 1 verse 5 NIV, Matthew 5 verses 13 to 16, Ephesians 2 verse 10, Galatians 6 verse 2, 1. Corinthians 12:12-27. That God's word is yes and amen. That no human being should devise their own purpose, but must serve God's purpose or make themselves irrelevant and suffer. The consequences for disobedience. That there is a fire within every fire, which fuels and supports the fire, and which, without warning, whenever the fire burns in contradiction to the law and science of life, overcomes the fire, and reduces the fire to ashes that becomes a planet and volatiles that never reunite with the ashes. And that there is a life inside every life, who is one and the same as the fire that is within every fire. And that this life overcomes every life that lives in contradiction of the law and science of life, and reduces them to dust and a graceless soul. That there is a precedence for everything that happens under the sun, because whatever is, has been before. And whatever happens has happened before. For that reason, human beings have no excuse for not always doing what is right and just. That through everything God has created all around us, everything that is right and just was made clear to us, that religion was allowed by God to serve spirituality and not to substitute for spirituality. That knowing God is easy and does not require high academics, philosophy, science, or otherwise, but humility and care for the well-being of others, ahead of one's own well-being. That it is easy to keep the commands of God in the Bible and satisfy the law of Christ, simply by desiring for others what we desire for ourselves and helping them to achieve it. And that we are free, and so, each has the right to be left alone without harassment and exploitation. That when our freedom is trampled underfoot, we should not retaliate or give ourselves to complaining. That instead, we should regard our hardship as a sacrifice to the Lord, who sees all our sufferings and who in time rewards all obedience and submission to every authority that was placed over us, that it has been given to all, to choose to obey or not to obey, including obeying God or not obeying God. That we should not force our wills on others, but rather must allow everyone to make their own choices in life. And that whenever we impose our wills and values on others, whatever sin they commit in obeying us will be held against us by God, because we forced it upon them to sin against God, that we should abstain from political wrangling, and instead live as God has commanded us to live. That the order of authority in every human society must be good and conscientious leaders over the people, and humble servants of the Lord over the good and conscientious leaders of the people. That anything shy of this is usurpation of authority, and never fails to be punished by God, unless those to whom authority was given in this order willingly give away that authority, in which case both they and the ones they give their authority to become answerable to God for everything that happens around the authority, that we must believe God in everything, regardless of whether or not we can verify it. That by trusting God in everything, we will ultimately receive the evidence of what we believed, to further strengthen our faith in God, that we must remain humble in everything, like Jesus Christ was humble even unto death. That we should turn the other cheek when abused and leave vengeance to God. That we should bless those who abuse us and pray for their repentance and salvation, because the repentance of victimizers is what Jesus Christ sacrificed his life on the cross for. That poverty is unnecessary because poverty is a creation of human wickedness. That whatever we received is given to us to pass on to others around us, so that all will have and live without lack, praising God for his goodness. 1 Corinthians 12, verses 12 to 27. That we must always give to anyone who asks us for something that we have. That we must share generously with others, not only things we can spare, but things we barely have enough of for ourselves. That the more we give, the more we receive from God, that we should readily forgive and help those who wronged us get back into the circuitry of life, to produce more good works. That we should favor mercy over law enforcement, and pursue and promote love instead of law. That love is the fulfillment of life and of all things. That we are rich when we continually give, and are never without wealth or value. That even the have nots are wealthy beyond their wildest imagination, only that they are unaware of it because they have allowed the world to blind them to their true worth. That our true wealth and value come from promptly and wisely passing along what we have received, and not in storing it up for ourselves, like the farmer in the gospel who chose to build a bigger barn to store up his surplus for himself, instead of sharing it generously with the needy people around him, and the list continues.